I don't recommend seeing exercise as a tool to lose fat or lose weight. I recommend seeing exercise as a way to build muscle, stay active overall, help your cardiovascular health. And then if fat loss is a goal, I recommend relying pretty much exclusively on nutrition for that.
So on your Instagram, you recently said you switched from, quote, endless intensity to gently building muscle, end quote. Can you walk us through this evolution? What did it used to look like? What does it look like now? Walk us through everything you changed.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can probably relate to my story here. So in my mid 20s, I was doing what I thought was everything right, exercising every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and exercising hard and eating as little as possible, and all in the pursuit of trying to be fit. And if I'm being honest, trying to like kind of look lean and toned. And I thought that endless intensity, lots of cardio, lifting weights, but not just lifting weights, like also going and doing HIIT classes or whatever was the answer to that goal. And in my mid 20s, I started developing chronic pain all over my body, back pain, hip pain, shoulder pain, wrist pain, you name it. And at the age of 24, I felt like I was 90 and getting all of this physical therapy and massage therapy, and it would make me feel better temporarily, but never really solved the problem. And when I moved across the country, I stopped exercising completely just for a couple weeks to kind of get a new routine. And I felt better than I had in years. And I wasn't exercising. And I thought, wait a second, I thought my body was the issue this whole time. I thought that exercising should make you feel better and that there must just be some imbalance or something that I need to fix because I'm doing all the right things. I'm exercising really hard. I'm eating I'm eating in a calorie deficit, all those things. It must just be something wrong with my body. And what I realized is that it was my fitness program and my workouts that were the problem. It wasn't anything wrong with my body. And so I dove into all the research around, honestly, a lot about bodybuilding, learned kind of more the physics of exercise, studied all of that, and started applying hypertrophy work and the science of building muscle into my routine. Within a few years of doing that, or within really a few months of doing that, my body felt completely different. My chronic pain disappeared. And then I changed my nutrition and started experiencing body recomposition. So building muscle while losing fat. And all of that happened with a much less intense approach. I was working out for less time than I ever had. I was applying the scientific principles of hypertrophy. I was eating properly. I was eating enough protein. I was recovering. And I just noticed that my body started changing and evolving way more than it ever did by working out super intensely. And I was doing much, much less. And so that's kind of my goal, is to help people understand where to place their efforts so that you can see the results that you're after without causing all of these downstream issues like chronic pain, chronic fatigue, hormonal issues, all of those things that so many people experience. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
So it sounds like you were exercising too much and focused on the wrong things. I'm curious, looking back, what went so wrong? Was it too much hit? Was it too much zone two? Was it too much? Like what was too much? What were the major contributing factors if you had to summarize and prioritize them?
Good question. It was a lot of overuse, I would say. So I would do like kind of lightweight, high rep workouts. And then I would go lift weights in the same day. And so it was a lot of the same movement patterns over and over. And it was simultaneously too much load and too much repetition on my body, while also not being enough load, right? So we know that to build muscle and to stimulate muscle growth, you have to load muscles enough. And so I was doing a lot of too light loading, right? And so I think that constant repetition was what caused the joint pain and that I just wasn't recovering. I was working out every single day, and we know that muscle is built in recovery. It's not built in the workout. So I think it was a combination of too much repetition and not enough recovery.
So would an example be like very, very lightweight for, north of 25 or 30 reps, but you would do it every day versus slightly heavier weight and maybe not doing that weight daily, but doing it 2 to 3 times a week?
Yes. And for me, it was a lot of group fitness classes, which
Ah, they always get you.
yeah, that's what it was for me is and I love group fitness. It's so hard because I've been teaching group fitness for, over a decade, but it's just difficult in group fitness classes to I don't want to say impossible, but it is difficult to achieve your body composition goals in group fitness classes because a lot of times it is the lighter weight, higher rep work. And so it's difficult to get close to true muscular failure. Also, when you're following along in a class, everybody is going to get to true muscular failure, which we can talk about later. Everyone's going to get to true muscular failure at different reps. So if you're following a class and you're doing what the group is doing, it's difficult for you to make sure that you're giving your body enough stimulus and the right stimulus.
So for group fitness specifically, in your view, is there a frequency, if you had to generalize, that once you cross over, you start to realize diminishing returns in terms of how many times a week you're doing that group fitness class?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what the cornerstone of your routine is. I think that if you have a cornerstone of strength training and training close to failure, training each muscle group 2-ish times per week on non consecutive days, and you're doing group training outside of that, yes, there's absolutely a point of diminishing returns. I think maybe adding on like 1 or 2 group fitness classes onto that might be okay, but you have to look at how you're recovering. So if you're doing, you have that cornerstone of strength training where you're lifting weights, you're lifting close to failure, all those things, and then you're adding 2 group fitness classes each week. But those group fitness classes are making you really sore. They're making you really tired, and they're not necessarily adding to your hypertrophy training or your muscle building training or goals. And so they're kind of wearing you down. And then you go into your next workout and you're fatigued from that workout. You're fatigued from your group fitness class. You're sore from your group fitness class. You won't be able to put in the same amount of effort that you would if you took 2 recovery days instead and you were really fresh going into that workout. So that will affect your performance, which will thus eventually affect your results. So to answer your question, is there diminishing returns? Yes, but everyone's dose is going to vary depending on your recovery, depending on your lifestyle factors. So I would say, if you want to go to group fitness classes, which a lot of people like to go to group fitness classes, 1 to 2 per week, I would say would be the max.
So if we look to construct an ideal week and we had to generalize, so we've got 2 days for resistance training, and I'm assuming we're going to have some cardio in there. Could you walk us through what your ideal week would be for someone who's listening who, quite frankly, likes working out and maybe has time, but not a ton of time? They have a half hour or less than an hour. So we've got our 2 days of resistance training. Let's talk about cardio. Let's talk about group fitness. Let's talk about anything else. But like, how would you construct a week, whether that's, full 7 days or rest days or what have you?
Let's do it. So, if I had my ideal of like, this is what you do every single day, I would actually break up those resistance training workouts into more frequent workouts. So, I would say working each muscle group 2 times per week on non consecutive days over like 4 or 5 workouts, but those workouts are going to be shorter. So, the reason that's beneficial is because shorter strength training workouts, you can put in more effort because they're not so systemically fatiguing. And so you can focus on doing more reps with the weight that you're holding if you're less fatigued. So spreading those workouts out throughout the week would be my ideal. So let's say Monday, you're doing an upper body workout. And then if you have the time, you could tack on maybe 30 minutes of cardio. Tuesday, maybe you're doing lower body, adding cardio again if you're feeling good, maybe a walk. Wednesday, you're doing maybe core, some full body. Thursday, Again, core, full body, Friday, full body. So Saturday and Sunday, you leave for your active recovery days. And those are the days that I like to recommend getting in the majority of your cardio. I recommend about 150 minutes per week of light to moderate intensity cardio. You can break that up however you'd like, but I like to do the bulk of my cardio sessions on Saturday and Sunday. So these are your recovery, active recovery days where you're walking, you're jogging, you're doing cardio that you enjoy and that's easy to fit into your lifestyle. And then one other thing I would sprinkle in there, and you could do this really on any day. I like to do it after a day where I'm not working legs, is one HIIT session. So one really short, intense, all out HIIT session, 15 minutes or less, where you're doing some sprint work. And you can sprint, physically sprint outside, or you can sprint on a bike, you can do jump squats, anything where you get your max effort for around 30 seconds to a minute. And then full recovery in between. So, like a few minutes of rest in between, and then repeat that a few more times. HIIT is one of those things that less can be so much more. It's hard on your system. It's hard to recover from. So I would say one or two of those per week. Again, I like to do those on my days where I'm not working legs, just because it's so fatiguing on the legs. So you could put those on your Saturday or Sunday, or you can put them on a day that you're lifting. So I think that would be kind of my ideal layout if you had all the time and you had enough recovery, right? Because if you're doing all of that and you're like, I am gassed constantly, then let's take something out. And the first thing I would recommend removing is that HIIT, because you're getting the cardio from your light to moderate intensity cardio, and then you're getting the strength training from your lifts.
And so it was interesting. You layered on a little bit of cardio on those lifting sessions. So can you talk about what that looks like in terms of duration? What type of cardio? Is it zone 2? Is it zone 4 or 5? How do you think about that? Because many people just will simply break them up. They'll just do resistance training and then they'll do cardio the following day.
Yeah. And you can absolutely do that. I think I like the zone 2 cardio because you get cardiovascular benefits, but it's not so hard to recover from. So again, if we're thinking about having a really potent, really effective strength training routine, recovery is really important. So that's why I like zone 2 cardio. You kind of get the best of both worlds. With zone 2 cardio, it's best to have your sessions be longer, right? So like 30 minutes or longer. But if we're being practical about it, not everyone has that amount of time to devote 30 minutes or longer in addition to their strength training workout. So I say just get it in however you can. If you get it in 15 minutes here or there, that's still going to be beneficial. One important thing, one question that I get asked a lot about this is, do I do cardio before or after strength training? Like if you're going to put it in one session. I recommend doing cardio after strength training. Do strength training first. You want to go into your strength training sessions as fresh as possible. And so that goes for what you're doing before that strength training session, as well as what you're doing in the days before that strength training session. I like to recommend zone 2 cardio, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the other zones. I think the other zones have been demonized. I think if we're moving our body and we're improving our cardiovascular health, we don't have to be so obsessive about which zone we're in. Just get your body moving at all.
You just got to push it.
Yeah. Totally.
And so something I like, I'm curious, when I do resistance training and I want to get a little bit of cardio in, I'll row or I'll do the ski erg, and I'll feel like I've got a head start. Like I'm already moving, I'm already warmed up, I'm already like probably in zone 1, maybe a little bit of zone 2. So if I want to push it even for a couple minutes, I feel like I'm not starting from zero. Like I've already got some momentum, and it's often easier to kind of jump right in.
Yeah, you're warm. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, how long are you doing your cardio before you go into your strength training?
So I'll do it after. I do the cardio after, but like strength training, I'm the person at the gym. I don't like sit around. I don't wait a minute between sets. It's usually 30 seconds, maybe 45. Like I'm the guy, I'm not on my phone. I'm just like going. The machine's not open, I'll go to the next one. And so my heart rate is probably like perpetually in mostly zone 1 when I'm doing resistance training, because I'm just moving. Yeah. And I'm efficient. I also, I'm a dad. I've got a business to run. Like I'm short on time. So what I will do in 30 minutes or 45 minutes is usually what most people accomplish in double the amount of time. So if I go straight to, like I feel like I have a little bit extra time. If I go straight to cardio, I feel like I've already got like a start. I'm warmed up. Like I can often like push it faster
Yes, totally. And you're doing so that's really smart what you said is you'll just go to another machine if the machine's taken. That's called superset training and that's what we do in our classes. And it's a really efficient way to strength train while not compromising your results. So you're working one muscle group, and while that muscle group is resting, you're going to go work another muscle group. And I personally like this type of training because, yeah, it kind of keeps your heart rate up. It keeps you going. It keeps the blood pumping. You don't ever cool off because you're never just resting for like minutes on end. And it makes your workout so much faster and more efficient. So I recommend that's why you can cram a lot into 30 minutes. You can really get your full strength training session done in like 30 minutes. And then if you have the full hour, then you can go get your cardio done in the last 30 minutes.
And something I want to come back to with resistance training I thought was interesting you called out was this idea of like you were lifting too light. And this one, there's lots of opinions on, do I need to lift super heavy and what does that look like? You said failure, but there's lots of ways to get to failure. You can get to failure at 15 reps, 20 reps, or 5 reps. What's your view on heavy and when heavy is necessary or not necessary?
Oh, there's so much to say here. And there's so much talk on the internet right now about how women of a certain age need to lift super heavy and that lighter weights stop working for them once they hit perimenopause or menopause. And we can get into all of that. What the science says is you can build the same amount of muscle, whether you're doing 6 reps close to failure or to failure, or whether you're doing all the way up to 30 reps to failure or close to failure. What matters is that those last few reps are really challenging. A lot of people don't know what failure training is or what failure training feels like. So, failure means that you are physically incapable of completing another rep. What that typically looks like, let's say you're doing bicep curls. Your first few reps will feel good. You're able to go at like a certain speed. After, however many reps you're doing, towards the end of that set, you will physically slow down. It's called a decrease in velocity. And when you reach that decrease in velocity, that's indicative that you're close to failure or to muscular failure. If you could do your last rep at the same speed that you could do your first rep, you probably are not close enough to failure. So that's kind of the biggest indicator and the biggest thing that I like to watch out for to know like, okay, do I need to do more reps or do I need to increase my weight? Am I actually close to failure? The second recommendation that I have to know if you're close to failure is to do what I call the rest test. So do your final rep. If you think you're at failure, do your final rep, set the weights down, break for 5 seconds and try to do more reps. If you could do 2 or 3 or more reps, then you weren't actually close to failure. You were just fatigued. And that's what a lot of group fitness classes do is they fatigue you, but you're not actually getting close to muscular failure. So as far as, and I'm sorry, Jason, you're going to have to remind me of your question because I'm already like lost.
It's this idea of when do I need to go heavier? If at all, is it absolutely critical for people to go heavier or is it not?
It is critical when you are doing more than 30 reps. So if you can do more than 30 reps without getting close to failure, you need to go up in weight. Now, getting getting close to failure in 30 reps is tiring. That's a lot of reps. Mentally and physically, you're really going to be burning. You might get bored by 30 reps. So from a practicality, and it takes a long time, right? So from a practicality standpoint, you might go down. Like I like to be in that like 12 to 15 rep range. So you have to lift heavy enough to get close to failure in that 12 to 15 rep range. That's just what feels the best for me, but you can absolutely do 6 reps and take that 6th rep close to failure. But if you find you're being stopped by the burn and not being stopped because you're actually close to failure, that's another reason I recommend going up in weight. So the burn is one of those things that's really confusing to people. They think, oh, this is burning. That means it's working. That means it's burning fat or that means it's building muscle. But the burn is just a buildup of hydrogen ions in the muscle that causes that uncomfortable sensation. The burn alone is not known to cause hypertrophy or cause muscle growth. So if you're stopping a lift because it's uncomfortable, because it's burning, not because you're close to failure, you're not hitting that stimulus required for muscle growth. So I recommend if you're doing, those higher reps and you're being stopped because it's burning, then try to go up in weight.
Well, the other I agree. I like 12 to 15 reps also, and I like it for a couple of reasons. One is form. I think at least in my experience, when I start to go lower, 4 to 6, you start to really push it in a way where I start to compromise form just to get the rep, and that's whenever I've gotten injured lifting, that's when it's happened. On the flip side, if I go too light, call it north of 20, 25, 30 reps, which I'll do occasionally, invariably I'll find myself in a rush. And then I'm also losing form in a different way. Like I'm just going fast instead of like you want slowish, controlled movements, not, but if the, but I find myself just trying to rush through it. And then that happens with abs a lot too. It's like, no, I'm just like trying to do the crunches. Like I'm doing 50, whatever the number is, 50 crunches. I'm just trying to get through them. And wait, actually, I'm not feeling, I could probably do 25 and have this be a lot more effective.
Right. Because your body is, we're always looking for the path of least resistance. And literally and figuratively. And so when you're doing a movement and you're not thinking about it, your body has really sneaky ways of compensating to make the movement easier. And that's not really what we want when we're training, right? We want the movement to be hard in the right ways. And so crunches is the perfect example. If you, let's say you're trying to get through your crunches and you're trying to just get to the end. You're like, okay, I want to get to this amount of reps. Your head will start to sneak forward, your arms will start to sneak forward. You will start to subtly compensate to move yourself towards your center of gravity and take less load off the abdominals as you get fatigued and as you're just trying to get to that end number. So that's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily recommend just trying to get to a certain amount of reps. What I like to do is just pick a weight that I think will be challenging and do as many reps as I can. Sometimes I'll pick a weight and I'm like, okay, I know I can only do 10 reps with this weight. And I'll get to 12, I'll get to 15, I'll get to 20. And you surprise yourself a lot. You're a lot stronger than you think. And I think when we're left to our own devices and we're like, okay, I only have to do 10 reps of this, you do 10 reps and you were nowhere near that muscular failure point. You were, 6, 7, 8 reps shy of muscular failure. So that's why I just say do as many, pick a weight that's challenging and do as many reps as you can.
And this may be somewhat controversial, but I've become more of a fan of machines over free weights in that they keep you honest.
Yes. I love machines. I mean, we don't use machines in Evlo because we're a home-based program. So I don't use machines, but I love machines and I recommend them. I think they can help increase your stability. So, like if you're on a leg press, your back is super stable. You'll notice you can lift a lot of weight on a leg press and you can really get close to that muscular failure point and you're not stopped by your low back or you're not stopped because your grip strength and you're holding the bar, you're holding dumbbells. So, I'm honestly a big fan of machines and we see from the literature that they can build just as much muscle and strength as free weights can.
Jason Walkup here, founder and co-CEO of mindbodygreen and the host of the mindbodygreen podcast. Please subscribe. You'll never miss a show and you won't regret it. So on the subject of building muscle and strength, you recently shared, so you're a mom again. You have 2 under 2. That is, you're awake and talking to me. That is an accomplishment. That is an accomplishment right there. But you've shared you've gained almost 5 pounds of lean muscle mass in what time frame? It was very short.
Yes. So in between my first two pregnancies, so I just had my second 3 months ago. But after my first pregnancy, I gained about 4-ish, 5-ish pounds of muscle within 3 months. But I gained it relatively quickly the second time. Before my first pregnancy, I had gained about 8 pounds of muscle over and lost about 5 pounds of fat over the span of a year. And then after my pregnancy, I wanted to build it back and built it back much faster the second time. And this is shown in the literature to be a real phenomenon. They think that it has something to do with muscle memory. So when you build muscle tissue, you're also building more myonuclei, which don't go away if you do lose muscle. So when you go to build it back the second time, it tends to come back faster, which is really great news because it goes to show that the first time you build it is the hardest time. and it will take the longest and the most patience, but it's the best investment because if you lose it again, if you're sick or if you have a baby or if something happens, if you're injured, it's not all lost. It's not going to take as long as it did the first time. So I'm probably going to start another journey of body recomposition here soon once I kind of get my feet underneath me with this new baby.
That is impressive, though. 8 pounds of lean muscle and losing 5 pounds. And you're not, how tall are you?
5'6".
That's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I felt really good and I was really strong. But it did take it did take a full year.
Well, think about that. It doesn't matter. Like, that's still impressive. If you were to do that every year over the course of 4 years, you would be entering a professional bodybuilding competition. That's 32 pounds of muscle and losing, like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, I want to scream this from the rooftops because I'm like, it doesn't need to be so intense and exhausting. And I think the reason I was able to do that was because I was very intentional with my training and my nutrition. And for the first time in my fitness career, I wasn't doing things at the extremes. And because I wasn't doing things at the extremes, I wasn't feeling pain. I wasn't getting injured all the time. I wasn't burning out. I wasn't like, eating very little and then binging. It just felt very sustainable and I was able to kind of slowly chug along. And that's why I was able to get the results that I saw.
So, as it relates to being intentional with your training and nutrition, in your view, where did you have the highest ROI?
Tracking my food. And I know that, well, I'll say two things.
Macros?
Yes. Yes, both. Tracking my food and actually training close to failure were the two things that I changed, I think, that year that made the biggest difference. So I tracked, before that, I had never tracked my food. I had always eaten quote unquote clean. And when I started tracking my food, I learned that I was not eating nearly enough protein. I was eating about half the amount of protein that I should have been eating. And I was over consuming calories unintentionally. Not by a lot, but just a little bit. And when I changed those two things, I started eating more at my maintenance calories or maybe slightly below for the fat loss. And then I started eating about 1 gram of protein per pound of my body weight per day. And those two things ultimately allowed me to lose fat while building muscle at the same time.
Wow. Look, I think eating enough protein is paramount if you want to gain lean muscle mass. I think the world has done a 180 there. And I think the calorie conversation is so interesting. Nut butters, for example. I think as long as it was organic and didn't have seed oils, we were all good. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I would just have so much nut butter in my smoothie, whether it would be peanut butter or almond butter. And then I moved on to sunflower butter.
Me too. Oh, I can relate to this so much.
And then I realized, one, it wasn't good for me given the way I absorb fats. It was actually having a negative effect on my LDL and ApoB, which is another conversation. But two, the caloric load, like if you really look at that, like we're talking like 500, 600, but it's organic. It's all good. It's like, this is 600 calories, which are basically empty calories.
Right. And that's what's difficult about it is, there's eating clean and you can eat clean, but still be in a calorie surplus. And if your goal is body recomposition, that's an issue, right? So I think that's where tracking can be a helpful tool for some people. I know it's controversial. Some people can't track or, it's not good for them mentally, emotionally, and I get that. But I think for many people, it's such a awareness builder. You're like, oh, I thought I was doing everything right and I wasn't reaching my goals. It's because I was over consuming nut butter. And that was throwing me into a 500-calorie surplus.
So you've talked about cardio not being the primary tool for fat loss. So I'm like, we've got the 8 pounds of lean muscle mass, but you also lost the fat. I think that's appealing for most people. Let's talk about that. So if cardio, if you've dialed in nutrition, you're tracking macros, you're getting 1 gram per pound of protein, what role does cardio play then in your view? What worked from a movement standpoint to help you shed the fat?
Yes. So fat loss is primarily nutrition. We see from study after study that if participants don't change their calorie intake, but they just add cardio, they might lose a few pounds of fat in the first couple of months. and then it plateaus. So it's really not a significant driver of fat loss, contrary to all of the marketing that we've been fed over the last few decades that cardio makes you lean, cardio burns fat. Yes, it does burn fat, but it's not significantly causing leanness. That's primarily the role of nutrition. We also see that there's something called the constrained total energy expenditure model. This is really fascinating. Have you heard about this, Jason?
No, but maybe that'll explain my sourdough phenomenon, but I'll talk to you after you finish your point.
Yeah. So the constrained energy expenditure model basically says that we don't burn and burn and burn and burn. We once thought that the more activity we added, the more we burn overall, and that will increase your deficit. So we think calories in, calories out. And that's true, right? The laws of thermodynamics are absolutely true. Calories out have to be greater than calories in order for mass, you to have a decrease in mass. But what we see is that your body compensates at a certain point once you've burned a certain amount for the day. And scientists think that this could be an evolutionary mechanism to help us conserve energy and not overexpend our energy so that we have some energy left if there's an emergency. So, what happens is once you add a certain amount of activity, you stop burning calories overall. Your body compensates by borrowing calories from metabolism, inflammation, digestion, reproduction, mental health, all of these things in order to keep you within a narrow window of calorie expenditure. So people think like, oh, I'm just going to go burn 1,000 calories. I'm going to go burn off what I ate or drank the night before. But what we see is that it doesn't really work like that. So I don't recommend seeing exercise as a tool to lose fat or lose weight. I recommend seeing exercise as a way to build muscle, stay active overall, help your cardiovascular health. And then if fat loss is a goal, I recommend relying pretty much exclusively on nutrition for that.
Well, I'll explain what I'm experiencing. I think this is somewhat related. I'm curious your take. So I've increasingly focused on my zone 4 and 5 training. So I'm doing like 25 minutes a week of zones 4 and 5, where I'll row and I'll just really go for max heart rate. I'll split it up throughout the week. So it's usually split between 3 and 4 days because I don't like the 1 day approach because I think it's just like puts too much pressure on this one workout. And if you don't feel it that day, you don't bring it, you're just depressed, or at least I am. So I spread it out throughout the week. With that said, I'm still very focused on my macros. I got my protein. I'll send you our grass fed whey. I find myself eating a lot more carbs, specifically sourdough. Like when I'm in the zones 4 and 5, like I just consume so much sourdough bread and I feel like my body needs it. And simultaneously, I'm lean. Like my body fat is sub 10%, but I eat like I don't on the weekends. I kind of do whatever I want as long as proteins are cornerstone, and I still am active on the weekends. But I found like you'd always hear you'd see like that cliche, if you will, on social media. Zones 4 and 5 is fat loss mode or what have you, and I'm kind of experiencing that to some degree where I feel like I'm eating more, but I'm not gaining fat. Like I'm not restricting myself at all, with the exception of nut butters. I'm over nut butters. But I feel like I need more carbs. I need more sourdough. Like when I work out that hard, those zones 4 and 5, they're not long, but when I'm in there, like I go for it. It's short, but like I go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So this would be my guess. So a lot of people would say, oh, you're burning so many more calories in those workouts. But if you look at it, right, it's that doesn't make sense because the workouts are really short. So you're probably not burning, even though you're going all out, you're probably not burning a ton of calories in the workout itself. My guess would be that you're going through all your glycogen stores by hitting it really hard and you're improving your insulin sensitivity. And because of that, you're able to refuel with food and your food is being used to replenish your glycogen stores instead of being stored as fat. So that would be my guess.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds about right because my insulin, all those numbers are low. Like I'm not even close to being I'm very metabolically fit.
Which is insane. And the same thing can happen with strength training because when you train close to failure, you're also emptying glycogen stores, again, to be refueled by what you're eating and how you're fueling instead of all of those glycogen from your food being stored as fat.
One way to get someone excited about adding lean muscle mass is it gives you more wiggle room with your diet. The more lean muscle you have, the more metabolically flexible you are, and the more likely the donut or whatever treats you're going to enjoy whenever you want to enjoy them are going to impact your metabolic health. So and you could actually be heavy. You could have more body fat because you've got more muscle. It's better like it. So
Yes. Regardless of how much fat you have, I always say I recommend building more muscle because you're increasing your body composition, whether or not you lose fat, because you're increasing the ratio of that muscle to fat. And like you said, that is absolutely of metabolic benefit. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people will claim they don't lose fat with strength training. In fact, strength training itself, the workout, isn't necessarily going to cause a lot of fat loss. It's the long-term downstream effects of improving your metabolic health that can ultimately support leanness. But we also, calories in do matter, right? But that's why I always say like strength training is more of a long-term play, but it can absolutely help you maintain leanness if that's your goal.
so for everyone who wants to gain lean muscle and lose body fat, this is where I think the scale is a complete failure.
Yes.
What's your view? What should we really be paying attention to? What are the alternative metrics?
I recommend, well, if you have access to a DEXA scan, that's great because then you can see how much muscle and bone you have and how much fat you're losing. You might find that if you're body recompositioning, if you're losing fat while building muscle, the scale doesn't change. I was actually heavier after my body recomposition journey than I was before I started, even though I went down 2 pant sizes. So a DEXA scan is great. I get a lot of questions about the home body scale. I think it's called Hume. It's a body composition scale. You like hold these two little panels.
The InBody is very similar to that.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I've tried it. And what I did is I did a DEXA scan and then I went home and directly used that. And what I found is that it overestimated my body fat and no, I'm sorry. It overestimated my lean mass and underestimated my body fat. So
That's great.
yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. And yeah, it made me feel really good afterwards. But I was like, okay, I think the source of truth is probably the DEXA scan over this. But if somebody is just what matters is the progress, right? So if somebody is using the same tool, it will show you progress over time, even though it's the absolute numbers maybe aren't correct. So that's a tool someone can use and just kind of just tracking your progress. And then I also just say, like, what are the changes that you're seeing in the mirror? Or are you getting stronger? Are you feeling better? Are your clothes fitting better? Those are way more reliable indicators that you're on the right track than the scale.
100%. And I think whatever machine, and like DEXA is the gold standard if you can do that, but whatever machine you subscribe to, as long as it's like directionally accurate, like stay on the same machine. Like, are they getting better? Or are they worse? Don't alternate from, oh, well, I'm using this scale and that scale because they're going to be all over the place. Just pick one and go with it. And are the numbers basically improving or not?
Exactly. That's exactly what I recommend. And you also want to do it at the same point in the day, around the same hydration level, around kind of what you've eaten. So I like to say just do it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach before you've like eaten and drank a bunch of things because that will pick up as lean mass. So water and food will register as lean mass. So it can throw off your lean mass estimates. So try to do it around the same time of day.
And then, like you mentioned, clothes. How do your clothes fitting? Photos, before and after photos. Take a photo. Like photos don't like these things don't lie.
Yes, it does not need to be as complicated as we think.
And so let's talk about the pelvic floor because I think this gets into function. It's like part of the why. So like, why are we doing the resistance training? Why are we doing the cardio? Sure, we all want to look good, right? We all want to feel good, but we also want to be able to move functionally as we age. And for women, the pelvic floor, like this is something we're all starting to pay attention to. So how do you incorporate pelvic floor training into your routine?
I think it depends on where you're coming from. If you are pregnant and postpartum, this is obviously a different conversation. But just for the general public. Breathing properly and bracing properly as you're lifting is the most important piece to having a strong functional pelvic floor. So, how we do that is when you are lifting the exertion portion of the movement. So, let's say you're doing a bicep curl, the curling up is the exertion portion of the movement. Breathing out through pursed lips, like you're breathing out through a straw. And at first, you might imagine as if your belly button is kind of lifting up and in. Like if there's an elevator, the elevator is rising up towards your head. You're breathing out through pursed lips as you do the curl. And that reflexively engages the kind of canister of your trunk. So your pelvic floor and your diaphragm work kind of symbiotically. And so that engages the pelvic floor, engages your deep abdominal muscles so that you aren't putting pressure downwards on the pelvic floor. So I think it gets overcomplicated. And when we are postpartum or pregnant, there's definitely more considerations. But just for the general public, that's really all you need to do as you're lifting weights.
It makes sense. Now, it brings me to another point. So you mentioned pregnant, postpartum. If we were to zoom out, let's look at women by decade. 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. Are there slight tweaks you would make to listeners by decade in terms of their workout, how they structure their week, their resistance training, what have you? What changes for you by decade? And we can start with the 20s and go all the way out.
It's interesting because, again, there's a lot of chatter online about how women in perimenopause need to be training differently than women in their 20s, 30s. And what we see from the literature is that this is not true.
Let's go for it. Let's go for the IG reel right now.
Yes. So, okay. You can train as a perimenopausal woman the exact same as someone in their 20s. The scientific principles of hypertrophy do not change. You can lift close to failure using 6 reps, or you can lift close to failure using 30 reps. What matters is that you are approaching muscular failure. You don't have to do 4 reps 4 times as heavy as possible. And the reason why this is really important for women of all ages to know is because we are not consistent with strength training, just overall as a population. Women are afraid of it. They're afraid they'll get bulky. They're afraid of hurting themselves. And so if we can reduce the barrier to entry by saying you can lift super heavy for 6 reps, or you can lift relatively light all the way up to 30 reps, that gives them a lot more freedom to do what they enjoy and do what they feel comfortable with. And ultimately stay consistent to build muscle, because that's what we need as we age is muscle. The sooner you can do it, the better, but it's never too late.
I love it. We covered a lot today. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to touch on before we close?
I don't think so. I think we covered so much. Great questions today.
And where can everyone find you online? What are you up to?
Yes. So I'm Dr. Shannon DPT on Instagram and TikTok. Evlo Fitness, Instagram, we put out a lot of educational content there. EvloFitness.com is our strength training program. And the Dr. Shannon Show is my podcast.
Amazing. Well, Shannon, thank you so much. We're big fans of your work. And check out all those links, everyone. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.